Have you ever loved a woman? Lord knows you don't know what to do. You give anything for that woman. Your house and all your money too.
Stay posted, everyone. Just waiting for Macauley here. He should be here shortly, and we will get started. It will be starting momentarily.
Have you ever loved a woman? And you know you can't leave her alone. Have you ever loved a woman? Lord, you know you can't leave her alone. Something deep inside you won't let you break your baby down.
Hi, Macauley. How are you? Do you hear me? Hello?
Hi, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I had a different one of my accounts in my inbox, in my calendar. And somehow I think I maybe gave you this in an email separately. So I was waiting
Yeah.
on that one.
Okay, yeah, you just gave me this in the email yesterday, so that's what I clicked.
Yeah, no.
I was just, while I was muted, I was saying, do you record your end separately, and would it be helpful for me to record my end separately, or you just use the Zoom recording, in which case it probably doesn't matter?
Yes, I use the Zoom recording, but it's actually also live on my Twitch channel currently. Actually, I just turned it on.
Oh, okay. Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. It's just I mean, like, more exposure the better. So, Yeah, I'm just gonna fix that momentarily.
Okay, I was not planning to do this with video.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
you don't have to. It's not like a big deal either way. Because the primary thing is the podcast itself, but just while I'm recording, usually I'm just like, yeah, why not? Also put it on, so it's live as well. Yeah. So, all right. So, I mean, whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay. I would just assume not do it with video only because I actually have a little bit of a headache and I'd rather kind of not stare at the screen.
Not a problem at all. That's totally fine. Totally fine.
Okay.
They hear you live and they see a good photo of you. So.
All right, great.
We're good. All right. So let me go more. I have done this before and gotten excited and forgot to actually click the record button, which has been bad. That's actually honestly the other good thing about putting it on Twitch, because I've forgot to press that button before, and then I was at least able to salvage it from Twitch. So, all right, so we're gonna get started right here. More chord. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Premier Chess CEO, National Master Evan Rabin, and I'm excited to be here with a good friend and colleague of mine, Macauley Peterson, on the 124th edition of the Premier Chess podcast. Macauley I've known for many years when he was living in New York, and we grew up playing at the Marshall, other places in New York. And Macauley has had actually a long career, I would say primarily as a chess journalist. He actually currently lives in Hamburg, Germany, where for a couple of years he was working as a content director for Chess 24. More recently, with Chess Pace, but actually fairly recently, he just started as the operations associate at Play Magnus Group, which of course is, has quickly become, a very big platform in the chess technology space. He's also the producer of the Full English Breakfast podcast. He was the associate producer of the 2016 film Magnus, obviously about the world champion Magnus Carlsen. He has a BA in philosophy from Princeton, MA in film studies from University of Amsterdam, and a master in law and business from the Bucerius School. So, Bucerius Law School. So, thank you so much, Macauley, for coming on today. How you doing?
Hi, Evan. Fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. And you didn't mention that we both taught chess classes at Browning with Bruce Pandolfini working for Shanaz Kennedy, which I learned from your interview with Bruce a few weeks ago.
That is actually wow. That is a big oversight. Bruce obviously is a dear mutual friend of ours, and as you probably know, he was on our podcast recently, actually, and that was such a tremendous experience. Bruce Alberston, rest in peace. That was the beginning of my chess teaching career, actually. So.
Yeah, no, I'm mostly joking. I think I did about one semester there while I was in high school at Hunter, but I did get to know Bruce, and we have met up in New York when I have been back subsequently. So yes, I imagine we still have a lot of contacts in common from the Marshall Chess Club days, and it's been the time has really flown by. I think the last time I was at the Marshall was actually with Magnus prior to the documentary in about 2010.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy. It's a it's a crazy time actually with a lot of stuff going on actually, which is kind of exciting. So, So tell me, Macaulay, before we get into the meat of the conversation, I talked about your background, on a high level. Is there anything else that you think is worth mentioning, in your introduction?
Well, I mean, you certainly covered most of it. I kind of fell into the chess business from working in film and video, and that was the source of my coming to Europe was to study film at the University of Amsterdam, and it was really just by coincidence that I decided to go to Vaikenze to the Tata Steel Chess, which is actually on now as we're recording this. Back then, it was still called Chorus Chess,
Mm.
and my first magazine articles about chess was covering Gata Kamsky's return after his hiatus.
Being a doctor, I believe, right? Or I'm trying to be a doctor. No, law school. Law school.
Yeah, he says now he never really left chess. It was temporary. It was always sort of a temporary thing, I think. But he hadn't played for a while and was suddenly thrown in to the top group in Vaikenze, and I wrote a story about that for Chess Life. And while there, just by accident, happened to discover that the ICC's Chess FM broadcast, which was the early, pre-streaming, was the early live commentary option, was being produced over Skype, and so I could call in and report from the press room, which was really just for fun. But then it kind of went well enough that they asked if I could do it again, the next day, and then that became the rest of the tournament. And then after the tournament, it was, would you like to go to Linares and cover the super tournament there?
So I guess, yeah, once you do one, you're kind of sucked into it a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, so I really did just get sucked into it. I did a few tournaments for them on a freelance basis, finished my film studies master's, and then they sent me to Mexico City to cover the World Championship in video. So it became this kind of mashup of interests, and and that sort of launched my chess career, which is now going on 12 years.
Wow. So we've actually had a couple other, great chess journalists, on the podcast. Obviously Bruce himself and Jen Shahadi, who I know very well as well. What about chess journalism do you value the most? What makes it so interesting to you?
Well, for one thing, I've never often referred to myself as a journalist. I've sometimes called myself a quasi-journalist.
Or I should say journalist and reporter, and covering
I've
these
certainly
events.
done journalism style things and tried to conduct myself in as a journalist would. But the distinction is that a journalist really has to maintain free of any conflicts of interest, and that's very difficult in the chess world because there's just not a lot of real chess journalism. There are very few, I would say, professional journalists who are covering chess or who are doing chess journalism as their full-time work. So when I'm reporting on tournaments, if I'm working for ICC or working for the St. Louis Chess Club and producing a webcast, or any of the work that I did for Chess 24, it can be newsy, it can be journalism rated, but I am working for a company, so it's not quite the same as if you're covering something that you have no vested interest in. And that's a reason. That's the distinction that I would make. But what I like about it, I mean, I think what drew me to chess and chess reporting is first and foremost just the diversity of the players and the characters that you encounter in the chess world. I've always been drawn both by the drama of the sport itself, and that of course comes from being a lifelong player since elementary school, and then also to the characters of the people who are playing, which really runs the gamut. I mean, you'll find so many different personalities, so many different uh, backgrounds and life histories, and that's always been kind of a fascinating element. And it also makes for good stories when you're reporting or writing.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think that was an interesting distinction that you made, between, basically reporting and journalism, and some of the, nuances that, we might not realize. So along with chess reporting, you've had the privilege actually of traveling all around the world. You said Linares and Wikmanji, and I'm sure you traveled, in Asia as well, and all over, covering stories and meeting, all the top players in the world. Actually, later this week, we actually have a podcast recording with Nigel Short, who I'm sure you've met, maybe before, for instance. So, I mean, could you tell me like one or two, like just, I mean, I'm sure you could talk all day about this, but maybe just like one or two interesting stories from your times, traveling as a reporter.
Yeah. Well, as far as travel goes, of course, Nigel is the world champion. I think he's hit up more countries than probably anybody in the chess world.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate in where I have gotten to go. I think I've been to about 35 countries or so, maybe a little more. And yeah, that's was a fantastic aspect of being on the chess circuit. Um, and yeah, I mean, probably some of the stories that I remember the most are ones that were involved, chess players away from the board,
Mm.
in some of their more, more personal times, also getting to know them a bit more. So, for example, I think I have a few memories of riding in cars with some players that ended up having multi-hour conversations, which never really occurred when you're at a tournament,
Sure.
reporting on it. So, for example, I learned a great deal about Peter Lako's proclivity for professional wrestling on
Huh.
a bus to the airport after the Morelia tournament in Mexico, which was part of Linares at that time.
Is that 2008
Um,
or something like that?
yeah, around then.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
I
remember
think that's
actually
right.
my friend Frank Petrulli actually went down there, and there was like a amateur division as well. Just like super excited about seeing all the top players back then.
And similarly, I remember a bus ride where I discovered that Levin Aronian and I had a shared fondness for the Civilization series of games. So
Hmm.
we spent a good chunk of a bus ride discussing Civilization strategy and all of the different iterations of the game over time. Um, and yeah, I think, well, on the same theme, one of the very interesting experiences also was, and kind of how I got hooked up with the Magnus documentary in the first place was I was able to, I was invited to observe a training session between Magnus and Garry Kasparov in Oslo. So it was kind of a hush hush event when their training hadn't yet, wasn't yet widely known, and the we went in the car from his house actually to the hotel in downtown Oslo, and did a little interview. I remember, and then I was able to film the training session before he and Garry departed for a talk show that they had in I think it's Stockholm. So they had to fly that evening. So I was kind of left with having had the privilege of something that very few people get to witness. And in fact, that's all still footage that I'm sitting on to this day. It's never been never been published. I haven't had an opportunity or a good reason to do so. Um, it didn't make it into the documentary, which ended up focusing much more on the early part of Magnus's life, and then the run up to the World Championship match in Chennai in 2013, and kind of skipped over a big chunk in the middle, which is when a lot of my footage came from.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think that's when you fully obviously get to know people. Just like on bus rides and fights, and other times where you just have a chance to meet people and learn their stories.
Well, I can share from the Kasparov Carlson training session. I mean, one thing that stands out that might be of interest is just the way that they communicated. Um, they said relatively few words, and were a lot of times, just sort of darting back and forth between their own laptops and the board, and
Hmm.
and indicating moves just by gestures. Um, there were definitely sort of unspoken moments of recognition when looking at a variation or a refutation to a variation or something along those lines.
Wow.
And yeah, I was kind of a fly on the wall there, but it felt, it sort of felt like, I mean, I don't want to say like a sacred space, but if you're a chess fan and all I think all chess journalists are, it's pretty hard to escape the fact that you're the only one in the room with these two world champion, absolute legends of the game, and that was pretty special.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and that's again just like when you get to like meet people. I forget who I was talking to actually a couple weeks ago, to be honest. But it was someone who's like a little bit of a politician, and they were traveling around, and when they were on like long flights, that's when they got to actually know people, which is yeah, like pretty important. So. Yeah, the next thing I really wanted to delve into is just obviously something that's a common question and concern. As chess is not for the most part making the mainstream media. It is obviously a little bit. Queen's Gambit, of course, has been a huge inspiration to make that happen. Dylan McLean actually quoted me in the New York Times a couple weeks ago, which you might know. And it was actually like, it's kind of crazy. There were several other articles, in the New York Times recently, about chess, which is, obviously a pleasant change. But, at the same time, I'm also a realist, and I know that, Queen's Gambit mania won't, stay forever. So, what are your thoughts about how we could get chess as a little bit more of a mainstream part of the news?
Well, there's been this scholastic boom for a long time, and the in a funny way, this new streaming boom is something that I would have been all over a few years ago,
Mm.
but as it happens, I've been kind of on a chess sabbatical when I was finishing my last masters, and so I've almost missed the both the pandemic boom and the Queen's Gambit boom, which, as I understand from talking to colleagues, is even bigger than the pandemic boom. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it was always a question of trying to connect the scholastic boom to the professionals. So you had this phenomenon where there would be a lot of kids playing and chess programs popping up all over the country not just in the U.S., but we're talking primarily about the U.S. But then many of those kids would quit and they got into their teen years, let's say. And very few would follow it closely enough to care what was going on in the professional sport. So when streaming was just getting going, and I did the first U.S. championship at the St. Louis Chess Club, originally with ICC, and it was only on ICC, audio only, and then in 2010 we started the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
It was immediately clear that this was going to be a big deal. This was going to be the next evolution of marketing tournaments and trying to create an audience for elite tournaments. So that was a large part of the reason why I actually left ICC at the end of the fourth quarter of 2010 and started a company to focus on chess streaming. My first client was with the London Chess Classic and Malcolm Payne, which I ran the webcast for the first several years. Well, actually, not the first ones, but like the third through sixth, let's say. And then began doing more and more tournaments, and more tournaments expressing an interest in having live streaming. And because it was relying so much on the rapidly evolving technology, every 6 months or so, you could do things in much higher quality at much lower cost, it seems. And that continues today. I mean, the possibility of doing really high level webcasts from anybody's bedroom is really almost trivial. In 2010, you still had you still couldn't do multi-hour live streams without it costing a fortune, because you had to pay. You paid for the bandwidth. So the first year we did the U.S. Championship in 2010, for example, it was on the original version of Livestream, which is now owned by Vimeo. But at that time, I think we had a bill of, I don't know, something $10,000, $15,000 for the streaming, for the bandwidth involved, because it was 5-hour long shows, whereas only a year later or 2 years at the most, all of the streaming platforms were basically unlimited. So in the same way that computing power is doubling, through Moore's law, and storage is increasing in the same way, and bandwidth is also increasing. And so that was a good example of how you had a good idea, but the technology wasn't quite there, and then very soon afterwards it became ubiquitous.
Yeah, wow. And yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of great things for chess recently. You mentioned the Twitch stream. By the way, we do have our Twitch channel as well, of course, twitch.tv/Premier Chess, for those people that don't know yet. And yeah, I want to, actually, thank Twitch in general, actually, just for building such a big community, of streamers. For instance, one person who comes to mind, John Hendrick, is someone I actually haven't met in person yet. We met via his Twitch stream a couple months ago. He's actually been a podcast guest of mine. He runs a pretty good chess company in Houston. We've got many kids to our camp through Twitch. So yeah, it's been actually a great way to not only stay connected, but also build a community as well. And I look forward to seeing Twitch grow. I'm doing a joint match next week with Liza Orlova, who actually also helped design my stream as well. So we're constantly growing with that as well. So and yeah, it's definitely an interesting twist, and in the way that chess is going to the masses. To have Hikaru Nakamura with like 10,000 viewers, at the same time is honestly a little bit crazy, and absolutely amazing. And it's the first time ever that I've had friends that are not chess players come up to me and being like, "Oh, like, do you know Hikaru?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know. I know him personally. I had dinner with him last year when I was in Florida. With him and Robert McClellan and a couple others. But yeah, people were like actually hearing about people like him now, via Twitch, which is kind of cool. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and it's just like people are no longer you know just known in the chess world, but they're known elsewhere. So
Yeah, I have a video on my YouTube channel that I think has the highest or second highest views of a blitz match that Hikaru played with Magnus in Moscow after the World Blitz Championship one year,
I remember that actually.
which and I and I every few weeks or so at least I get a comment on the channel like, oh, is there more of this, or can you publish more of this? And and it's definitely something that I want to do and should do, and just it's just a question of trying to find the time and digging up the footage and making something that would be worth worth viewing out of it. Um, but that, that the impetus for doing that has definitely increased in the last few months as um, the chess boom has occurred, and that is showing up in the numbers everywhere, including even for my relatively stale YouTube channel that has been neglected completely for several years now, but still somehow manages to get good views on a number of videos, really thanks to other people's growing celebrity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but yeah, I mean, look, it's good for chess overall, of course. Um, let's go back actually to talk about your film. I mean, the film that you were associate producer of, Magnus, in 2016. I truly am grateful for all chess films. A couple weeks ago, we actually had Carla Berkowitz on the podcast, who was the producer for Critical Thinking, as you might know. We had Bruce, of course, who was an advisor for Queen's Gambit, on the podcast recently, and of course we had Fred Waitskin, who wrote Searching for Bobby Fischer, which was made into a movie, of course, on the podcast a few weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about the process of producing the film. You did talk about it a little bit beforehand, but what was the process like, and how was that for you?
Well, first I should say I played a very minor role. There were a number of associated producers, which basically just, in my case, came from having provided some footage from years before the documentary had been undertaken that wasn't available anywhere else, that they were interested in using. But fortunately, when I was discussing with the actual producers, the executive producer and the director, Benjamin Ray, um, we agreed that I could play a slightly larger role than perhaps some of the associate producers, in that I became essentially a chess consultant. So, for example, any time that a chess position appears in the movie, I selected that, tried to match it up with something that was historically accurate. So, for example, there's a shot of Magnus playing in Vaikenze, and I tried to find a position that at least closely matches up to what it could have been, although you can't see the position in the shot at all. I mean, you can see that, roughly that there are some pieces, and so I could take a best guess and then try to find something that would also be visually interesting. Then also advised the visual effects people on how to try to communicate the concept of his intuitive thought process visually in some way that was both aesthetically interesting, but also you know communicated the point quickly and easily. And I also got to see a lot of different cuts of the film, from an early 3.5 hour version, and then as it kind of got narrowed and more focused until what eventually became the picture lock version, and gave extensive notes that they many of which they incorporated into the final version that's screened. So yeah, that was very gratifying. But on the whole, my role was extremely small. And it's also worth mentioning that Ben Ray was not a chess player. He went on, his next film was called The Painter and the Thief, which has been really critically acclaimed, and I think is actually even bigger almost than Magnus, in terms of its impact in the film in the film world. Of course, the fact that the documentary got sold to Netflix meant that it had a very wide release compared to a lot of other chess documentaries that came before it, which would have been hard to find. This one could be was readily accessible by a huge audience, so that was great. I also got to go to the the premiere at the well, both in Oslo and at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York, which was a great experience. But for example, I was not on the red carpet, which gives you a sense of the relatively minor status of my role in the film.
Got it. Got it. Well, look, you are obviously being, a little modest too, which, by the way, is important. It's one thing we tell students all the time. Don't have like, an ego. You're, part of the team, and, okay, like team, makes everything happen, and everything, come around, right? Which is, an important aspect to, anything that we do, of course. So, yeah, no, it's still very cool that you've had some part, and honestly, one thing I tell actually people all the time, especially people that are in their job searches, and selling themselves, frankly, like, look, you're never allowed to lie about your experiences, but at the same time, like, associate producer is associate producer, right? Honestly, when I saw that on your, LinkedIn this morning, I was like, oh, cool. Honestly, I didn't know he was an associate producer on Play Mag.
Well, it was really a happy accident because I had done this previous videography for the Carlsons and for for his team, including his manager Espen. Um, I had done, for example, work for one of his sponsors and emceed a simul that he gave in New York, and then of course there was this Kasparov training session, and all of he had two visits to New York Fashion Week in the period when he was doing G-Star Raw modeling, and so I was able to go to those, shot some footage there. There was a chess lesson that he gave to Liv Tyler at the old chess forum in the Village. And that's actually, if you've seen Magnus, there's a clip of him playing in Washington Square Park, and Liv Tyler is shown there, and some of my footage is from that. And then they went back and found the hustlers that he played and shot interviews with them 2 years later, and sort of cut them together, which was pretty impressive that they were able to do that. Yeah, I don't think any of the footage from the chess lesson made it, and only one very brief clip of them in the Marshall Chess Club, or actually leaving the Marshall Chess Club, appears in the finished film. But we shot a lot more that day, which, yeah, I hope perhaps some other documentary sometime in the future might have cause to use, or else I'll figure out a vehicle to publish it myself at some point.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, and that's, yeah, I mean, again, right? It's great to be involved, anyway. And, look, at the end of the day, you know, uh, a title is a title. So, take it, right? So, yeah, the next thing we talked about, most of, honestly what I wanted to, ask you about, in terms of, being a reporter, sorry, more of a, reporter, for chess-based news, but also, I know you've done, some work with U.S. Chess as well, and, other, freelancing work, as well. I know you also are the producer, actually, of your podcast as well, the Full English Breakfast. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, at the moment, it's kind of dead. We,
Well, the
we
podcast that may eventually start again. Who knows?
yeah, we periodically at least pass messages saying, "Oh, we should do a reunion show, or we should do an episode." And actually, I'm always flattered when people contact me and say, "Are you ever going to restart this?" Which also happened the first time it was dead. It's been dead a couple of times, so that leads me to suspect that we'll probably will do more at some point. Although I don't think we'll do. For a while we were doing it. When we restarted, we were really doing it regularly, like every other week or so, and tried to make a go of it, tried to figure out if there was a business model around it, but didn't succeed. And after about 5 months or something, we just kind of let it fizzle again.
Mhm.
but yeah, I like to say that I got into podcasting before it was cool because I was very interested in it when it first became a thing. And I mean, before it became a thing, this was back in like 2009, 2008 probably was when I started listening to podcasts, and then 2009 was when I wanted to try one out myself. And originally just did a sort of a pilot episode, which was reasonably well received, but there just wasn't much of an audience for podcasts at that point. And then when I was coming to join Chess 24, I thought, well, maybe this would be an opportunity to restart it because Lawrence Trent was at that point also doing quite a lot of work for Chess 24 in the early days, was sort of on staff. So we were together a lot of the time, and so that made it easier. The biggest problem with doing a podcast with two other hosts is just the scheduling and trying to share the workload of preparation and squaring away topics and that kind of thing, and then most of the editing and publishing and marketing was falling to me, and so yeah, it was pretty much reliant on me to either carve out time to do that or it wasn't going to happen. And so, yeah, just lately there's been an extended phase where it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I enjoyed it, certainly. I mean, I'm a big podcast listener myself, and I enjoy, I grew up on radio, before there were podcasts, there was the radio. And it's funny now, for example, a lot of the National Public Radio shows that I listen to, I do listen to the podcast version rather than the live radio version, and they always have a little segment at the end reminding people that if you like this, you might try the radio. It's this newfangled technology. But yeah, in my house, all through my childhood, NPR was on much of the day, and so yeah, I grew up listening to talk radio in that sense. And so podcasting was kind of a natural evolution. There's something definitely different about the experience, not having to be distracted by visual cues, but just being able to think more about the content that you're listening to, and the fact that, of course, you can be doing other things like going for a walk or a run or folding your laundry or whatever at the same time. I think there's definitely a clear need and now a recognized demand for it, and you start to see it. As far as chess podcasts go, well, I mean, it's been nice to see that there's been a lot of new additions, including yours and Ben Johnson's in Perpetual Chess, which I have
Of course.
also supported and actually subbed in for him on a couple of occasions.
Oh, wow.
But he, I mean, I recognize how much work it is, and so I have a lot of respect for people who are able to keep a chess podcast going regularly and keeping fresh content and so on. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, it's honestly been a lot of fun. It feels kind of crazy, actually, that we're actually around the 1-year anniversary of it. And my friend Adam Schutte, the owner of Atomic Total Fitness, is the one who actually got me just started on it. And last December, inspired by him, I made a New Year's resolution. We're going to start a podcast. And the fact that you're episode 124 already is, pretty crazy, actually. But truly, I'm doing it for, and you mentioned, for yourself, you're struggling to, figure out a way to monetize, the podcast. Frankly, I am too. I'm talking about it, very openly on the podcast itself right now.
Well, we only made it up to about 53 episodes or so, and yeah, the last time we tried it for real, I think the idea was to try to get sponsors, pre-roll kind of sponsors, which I was interested in the model from Slate podcasts, like The Gist with Mike Pesca is one of my favorites, and so they have kind of subscribers that can listen without the ads, a feed for them, and then some kind of sponsored pre-roll content, and I think that is certainly doable, but you kind of need to develop a good track record and a good audience first, and that's always, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem in that sense. If you go to a sponsor and you say, here, I have this chess podcast, you have to be able to say, here's the demographic numbers, and you can expect to reach X number of people in these age ranges, and so on, and they're interested in Y and Z products, and so that's why we think you would be a good fit. And then, and then they'd be willing to throw you a little money. And of course, it doesn't, depending on the the nature of the show and the format, it doesn't really have to be that expensive, other than the time of the producers and the hosts involved these days. But yeah, of course, it's easier if you can kind of really make a business out of it, then you can also put more resources into making it more professional, and that is how you get the bigger audience and attract more attention in the first place, given that there's so much good quality content out there, including a lot of it for free, which that's always the challenge.
Right. No, absolutely. I definitely, like totally, appreciate that. And look, I mean, people have told me actually, right, quality over quantity. I was just talking to, actually one of our instructors, Phil Rosenberg, who actually was also one of our first couple of guests. And he actually, by the way, has a great YouTube channel / podcast, the Phil Rosenberg Show. Definitely recommend everyone, check it out. But yeah, we were actually talking about, quality over quantity. And that's why we have only great people like yourself and Nigel Short Macauley this week. I say that sincerely. So, the last thing I thought I would quickly ask you about, is Play Magnus. I know you just started there, I believe this month, at least according to LinkedIn. They're actually, I know they had their IPO recently, actually, in the Norway Stock Exchange. Definitely booming. I was talking to my friend, actually, Todd Bryant, last week when we had lunch or breakfast, actually, down in Orlando. He actually started working there full time recently, and Dimitri Snyder actually left J.P. Morgan to take a more of a full time role there as well recently. So, tell us just about the beginning of your role there, and how it's been going so far.
Yeah, well, I'm actually working with Dimitri, and I mentioned I had sort of a 9-month sabbatical from chess. That was as I was finishing doing a master's in law and business, and so while I kind of was keeping my options open, I was also considering looking for a next chapter in my career outside of the chess world, possibly in the fintech space, for example, which is has been another interest in recent years. And the difference was, and the thing that got me back, was that this is a way to try to combine some of these interests and still be in the chess world. Of course, there's a lot that I enjoy about the chess world, and have a lot of great memories from, and have good network connections, and but at the same time, finding an opportunity to make use of my masters and new interests was also a great opportunity. So yeah, I'm just really getting started, but handling more items on the legal and finance side. But it's an interesting time, as you mentioned, for Play Magnus, the Play Magnus group, because it's kind of an amalgamation of sort of separate chess companies with their own audiences and their own offerings and their own strengths and weaknesses, let's say, that is coming together to form a real behemoth. And so, to a certain extent, it's a little bit like returning, coming full circle, because I had done these 3 years, almost 4 years with Chess 24, even before it was known as Chess 24, pre-launch. And in that time, had actually made some of the first partnerships with Play Magnus, which at that time was just the Play Magnus app suite. And so then, having left and now coming back to Play Magnus, I will get to work with a lot of the same colleagues and still be involved in a lot of the same issues from Chess 24, but also on the group level, working with new people in both the Play Magnus app section of the company and also the Chessable, which is one of I would say actually probably the main piece of it at this moment. So Dimitri and the CTO both came from Chessable as a result of the merger, and the CEO, who I haven't yet met in person, was instrumental in bringing that merger about. So yeah, it's very exciting times, and I think there's something for everyone across all of the offerings, from the Play Magnus apps, which are very good for beginners. And Chessable has actually just this past week released an app for iOS that allows all of the Chessable features to be accessed on mobile, or at least most of them, and more to come. And for the fans, we have this Champions Tour, which starts again on February 6th, which very much plays up to the strengths that Chess 24 brought to the table in terms of broadcasting, live events, and commentary. And that's obviously grown tremendously since I left. We originally did commentary in just English, Spanish, and German, and now they're doing 6 or 7 languages and more on major events. And so it's a real global production now that is perfectly positioned to take advantage of the new interest in chess as a result, again, of the last 9 months.
Well, best of wishes to you, and yeah, it's definitely come a long way. I actually remember, almost 3 years ago now, probably, I literally ran into Dimitri in New York. I didn't even know he was in New York at the time. He was just visiting, and at the time he was just kicking off Chessable, actually, and he actually. I actually, after that, I introduced him actually to Bruce Pandolfini, who actually put some of his books on there, actually. They had a little bit of a deal, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, I heard they were getting acquired, and now they're fully integrated with Play Magnus, and Play Magnus is actually, I haven't actually honestly spent too much time with it yet. I actually, thanks to Tron Smith and the Chess in the Schools tournament, and actually a few of their tournaments, I actually won a membership. So I got to actually dig around it a little bit more, myself. But yeah, props to you, and good luck to you and the rest of the Play Magnus team. So anyway, Macauley, to wrap up here a little bit, just wanted to say it was really awesome, talking to you and learning more about your reporting career. Just some random insights, Peter Lako's love for wrestling and Ronian civilization strategy, but then also talking about Twitch, your involvement in the Magnus film, who knows, potential revival of your podcast, the integration of Chessable and Play Magnus, plus more. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover before we end?
No, I mean, I think we're really fortunate that our sport is one that lends itself so readily to online play, and that's both been a driver for growth this year, and also, of course, a huge piece of good luck for all of those of us who are working in the field, that we. Compared to so many, we have been relatively unaffected, and perhaps have even benefited from the lockdowns and the shift to remote work and so on. So, yeah, I'm very thankful for that, and I'm gratified that so many people are now taking up chess for the first time, or rekindling an old passion in it, and they will be able to discover that there's quite a lot of content of all kinds and all levels for them to feed those new passions.
Well, wonderful. Macauley, if anyone wants to maybe reach you, learn more about your you know, journalism or porting or play Magnus, you know, etc. How could people get a hold of you?
Sure, you can look up my Twitter. It's at Macaulay64, which is a reference to 64 squares and not my year of birth. Uh, I'm old, but not that old. And yeah, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you like as well. Well, I used to have a personal website, but at the moment it's offline. So that's another thing on my to-do list, which will I hope to get back to showcase especially some of the older content. Although you can still find my YouTube channel, and I'll be publishing new videos there at some point this year. If all
And
goes
what
well.
is the link to your YouTube channel for everyone to hear?
Yeah, I mean, just search for my name is the easiest. I think Macauley Peterson. Yeah, and you'll find it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Macaulay. Again, dialing in from Hamburg, Germany. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Evan. Take care.
Bye.